In this lesson, we will examine the Indigenous peoples' rights movement. This lesson's objective is to examine the causes and effects of the Indigenous peoples' rights movement, focusing on the years between 1955 and 1975. In this lesson, we will examine the causes of the Indigenous peoples' rights movement. We will look at examples of radical action, coalition building, and legal action in the Indigenous peoples' rights movement. So first we got some vocab. American Indian. This is a term for peoples whose ancestors lived in the Western Hemisphere before 1492. Other terms for this group of people include Native American, which is popular in the United States, First Nations, which is popular in Canada, and Indigenous peoples, which has become more popular recently. For most of this lesson, I will use the term American Indian because that is the term that most of the people we will talk about use to describe themselves in the years we are covering. If any offense was given, I apologize, no offense was meant. A tribe is a group of people connected by family, tradition, and history. And a sovereign government is a group of people with the right to govern themselves. One thing that is important to know for this lesson is many American Indian tribes are sovereign governments. This means that because of treaties signed with the United States government, many American Indian tribes are recognized as having a amount of self-government separate from the United States government. The Indigenous Peoples' Rights Movement. So the United States government had broken treaties with American Indian nations since the Washington administration. The picture on the right shows President George Washington ordering American settlers to move into land that was promised to American Indians in treaties between the United States government and their tribe. In the 1960s, young people from American Indian nations across the continent joined together to create the Red Power movement. They worked to build a coalition to achieve a variety of goals. If you take a look at the picture on the right, you can see many members of this coalition were very young. The movement's goals included celebrating Native culture, increasing tribal autonomy, and restoring treaty rights. One of the most famous events in this movement was a radical action which started in 1969 when a group called Indians of All Tribes occupied Alcatraz Island in San Francisco Bay for 19 months. The Indians of All Tribes took the former prison to protest broken treaties between American Indian nations and the United States of America. These treaties had said that American Indians would be given unused government land in return for their land. Their land was taken, but they were never given the unused government land they were promised. So the Indians of all tribes took Alcatraz as that land they were owed. You can see they set up a community there. On the upper right-hand side, you can see kids playing basketball and football. And on the bottom right-hand side, you can see people sitting down and setting up a community dinner. All right. So, as the months passed, Richard Nixon, who was the president at the time, sent representatives to negotiate with the Indians of all tribes. At first, they had hoped, well, we'll just ignore them and they'd go away. When this failed to happen, the U.S. government sent representatives. Negotiations broke down, and the protesters went home in 1970. but what they had done helped to inspire the movement. The indigenous peoples movement continued through the 1970s. They took part in other radical actions, including one at Wounded Knee, the site of the worst massacre of American Indians in U.S. history. They also took part in legal action, and in 1975, Congress passed the Indian Self-Determination and Educational Assistance Act. This act promised an increase in tribal self-rule and a renewed commitment to sovereignty. The picture on the right shows President Richard Milhous Nixon shaking hands with leaders of American Indian tribes. This was a major show of respect from one sovereign government to another. These are the sources that were used for this video.